Okay, we can take a few questions. Yes.
Mayor, I'd like to ask you a question, Tom Fitzgerald from Channel 5,
Yes.
that I often asked at the end of trials.
Okay.
Do you feel you made your case?
Yes.
How so?
I think, listen, we have a great project. We have the right partner. It's the right time. Everyone has been heard. Everyone's views have been reflected. And now it's time to vote.
Mayor, Ben Peters, Washington Business Journal. So the team today came out with a pretty extensive list of concessions that they were willing to make for the members of council here. Do you see a scenario in which they budge further, or is this as far as the team's willing to go?
I don't know. Well, I'm not exactly sure if I would call them concessions, but commitments. And I think what we heard from the members of the council, that there were some things they weren't sure about, or they weren't sure where they lived, and they wanted them reiterated. And I think other things weren't addressed and needed to be added. So I think that it is a pretty comprehensive list of, based on all of the questions that we got.
But do you see them making any further changes beyond what they made today, or is this kind of the end of the line?
This is Wednesday. We have to get to Friday. So, yes.
Mayor, Rafael Sanchez with the WCN9. Anything that was of the changes made by the council that right now stick out to you that maybe you don't agree with, or are you willing to just move forward with whatever they put forward, especially after hearing their input today?
Well, I got the legislation while I was at the witness table, so I do want to go over it. I'd gone over, I think, what I thought were the major changes with the council and the team yesterday. But before I comment further, we really need to go over the legislation.
Mayor, just to follow up on that, toward the end of testimony today, when you and Parker were discussing maintenance responsibilities and how that will be paid for, you noted there had been some redesignation of the funds from the RFK fund that would be reinvested back into the stadium, and suggested that there might need to be some adjustments. Can you clarify what adjustments you may be seeking?
Well, Megan, I was thinking back on that question, and I'm not exactly sure what the council member was asking. There were two types of questions like that came up. One of, I think Alan asked earlier about public road versus private road, and I just confirmed with my team that we're undergoing a master planning process, and the master plan will make designations if there is to be a private road, but more than likely all the major roads are going to be public roads. And when he was talking about maintenance of the mixed-use development, I was a little confused, because the way the mixed-use development will work is it will become privately developed, and that new owner is responsible for maintenance of their property.
Eric Fisher, Front Office Sports. The nickname issue really wasn't part of these 2 days. Clearly, the principals here have moved on from that. What is the concern, though, that there may be federal interference even after you presumably get an outcome here that you're looking for?
I don't think that we're spending any energy on that. We were focused on and we remain focused on what we need to do as a city. We kind of went through the history from getting control of the land, getting to a deal, working with the council, getting the approved budget. Now we need the approved terms, and that will be, then we will complete our local part. I think it's also important to note that everybody's kind of ready to go and waiting on the approval. So we're ready to hire some of the consultants that are going to represent us in kind of the project, the owner's side, and they are ready to hire people to get to work on concepts and designs and planning for the infrastructure work. So a lot of work can get started when this gets approved. Yeah.
Hi, Mayor. David
Hi.
Aldridge
Hi.
with The Athletic.
Hi, David.
Do you think you have the votes?
Yes.
And even with all the back and forth and rancor of the session today, do you think that anybody was swayed one
Well,
way
I
or the
have a
other?
different tolerance, I guess, because we are very pleased with the with the session. we got some good questions out. The team got to answer them directly and publicly. We feel pretty good about it. Yes.
Eric Flack from WUSA 9. Where's the middle ground on the labor issue? You argue that, a lack of union requirements protects DC businesses. Obviously, some of the council members feel different.
We have union requirements.
Blanket union requirements, meeting making them all union jobs. I think that's.
Well, I don't know that I heard anybody suggest that in that way. But the point I tried to make is that this is a huge campus, first of all, 180 acres, and it is a huge development that's broken down into 5 parcels. And the largest part, of course, is the stadium itself, which has a project labor agreement. $2 billion worth of work that are basically preference for the union trades, which we're fine with. That is a value that I support, and is a value that's a city policy on jobs of this size. But I don't think we do ourselves any good by not acknowledging the facts that a lot of union workers don't live in D.C. And the trades usually bring existing employees from job to job. So almost by definition, a lot of people that will be working on this job don't live in D.C. And so we have the balance of the project to make up for that. And so that's why I am concerned about saying the unions have to be preference on the $2 billion part and on everything else. I think we have struck the balance. You asked me about the balance. This is the balance. PLA on the stadium and non-PLA on everything else. I think that is a balance. Yes.
Thanks, Mayor. Jenny from the Washington Post. I just wanted to follow up on the PLI question because, yeah, you did raise this concern that with past projects like the Frederick Douglass Bridge you mentioned and a couple others, that the requirements for DC, for the percentage of DC residents working on the job had not been met. And I was wondering if you could explain more about the specifics of that, why you think that happened, and then how that could be avoided this time around.
Well, that's the crux of the issue, right? So we would love to be able to say that we have union jobs and they're DC residents. That's the perfect scenario, and we all, I think, have worked over the years to make sure that there are apprenticeships, to make sure our residents go into those apprenticeships and that they become union members. But it hasn't lined up like that exactly.
So then how do you avoid it this time?
I think you avoided this time by being honest about the reality and trying to create, not force that agreement that we're not sure that can be met with DC residents. And we're happy to, look, we'll talk about it. We'll talk to all sides to see if they have a different path to get to the majority DC resident. But, do you know how many times I go to job sites and somebody from Ward 8 will say, why isn't it somebody from Ward 8 on this job site? I don't see anybody from my neighborhood working here. Why do I see Pennsylvania and West Virginia tags at this job site? If I had $1 for every time somebody said that to me, I would be very wealthy. Am I making that up? It happens all the time. They say other stuff too that's not so nice. But that's what we're trying to address. And so if we go in and say, we know we're going to do our best to hire DC residents, but then they'll say, we can't find anybody. Or they don't know how to do it. Or we fired them because they didn't show up. Or they didn't pass I can give you so many, so I'm not anti-labor. I've supported labor unions my entire, and they've supported me. They're mad at me now probably, but I can't have a $4 billion project where DC residents aren't on the job. We can't do that. Yep.
Marielle with DC News Now. A question on the Metro part of this. I know there was the back and forth with Charles Allen about funding or not funding from DC a new Metro stop. I know that there's the $600 million fund for transit or transportation. So how do you see that being used for this project? Is there somewhere you'd want to see that go specifically?
The way I think it's structured is that excess ballpark funds that aren't being used to pay off I think our $500 million debt would go into a fund, about $20 million a year, that would be leveraged for more borrowing for this fund, for this transportation fund. Do I have that right? Okay. It over 30 years. So that's what it is.
So would you see that being used to potentially build a new Metro, or that's other types of
Well,
transportation?
my argument is that there will be transportation needs on that site, on the campus, and so I think having a fund is helpful. But it could be transportation, other infrastructure, and we have to work with the chairman, because I do think in that transportation fund, an allowable use should be for parks and green space, which was, he said was not included yet. Yes.
Two questions. You say you believe you have the votes. How many votes do you have?
I have enough.
So you believe you have at least 8? I mean, you'll need 9 in September, right? I mean, do you think you'll get past 8?
Mark, I think we'll have enough, and I'm not being coy, but you know, it's not over until it's over, and I want to make sure that I'm following up with all the members to make sure we are where we need to be.
And then you mentioned today the possibility of a firehouse being planned as part of this. Can you put some details on that, a timeline from when that and where?
No, I don't have any details other than I think the feedback that we've gotten is that we'll likely need one based on the amount of activity. And keep in mind that whole campus won't be built out on day one. So anytime, I think, between opening day and the full build out of the campus, we can construct a fire station.
On the campus, you're envisioning it? Or
I would guess, but it could be close by. Yes.
Thanks, Mayor. On affordable housing, you know, of course, very well some of the challenges that DC's affordable housing development space has faced in recent years.
Yep.
There's now a bit more of accountability associated with the timeline through these penalties. But we heard Christina Henderson seek this commitment that they're not going to come back and seek HPTF funds. For a lot of affordable housing, they rely on that. They rely on LIHTC, which is facing pressure. From your perspective, how does this get done? Do you have concerns about the realistic nature of delivering that on this timeline? And Councilmember Fruman also said that he doesn't think those penalties are strong enough. I'm curious for your perspective on that as well.
I'm impressed by the team's commitment to deliver on that timeline. I do think it's aggressive, but I think if it can be done, they can do it because they will be coming in with so much investment and construction. They'll have the ability to master plan. And so I think if it can be done to attract people interested in doing it, they can do it.
And do you think the penalties, Councilmember Fruman said he might want to see some stricter penalties on that. What's your perspective on the penalties?
You know, I would want to give that some more thought, but if they're going after an aggressive kind of timeline, like if you just look at the surrounding developments, they're not delivering housing that fast. They're not delivering housing that fast at Walter Reed. They're not delivering housing that fast at McMillan. They're not delivering housing that fast anywhere. So now this is 5 years from now, so things can change and interest rates can improve, the housing ecosystem can improve, all of that can change. And having the NFL as an anchor, I'm sure will attract a lot of interest and maybe investment. We had some concerns about them let me put it this way. I think the city being involved in kind of affordable housing financing is always a good thing in terms of attracting other investment. So I just hope that that prohibition doesn't slow the flow of capital into the projects.
I do wonder, with the myriad of issues, do you feel like some DC council members are missing the forest for the trees by talking about this and that? I'm really curious where your temperature is on that.
Well, I can't tell them what questions to ask or like, I'm not going to like gauge what's important to them or not. But we did kind of comment to ourselves do they know that this is going to be a $4 billion investment creating 30,000 construction jobs, $5.5 billion in tax revenue, and be a catalytic investment on 180 acres. That connects to the Anacostia River. So it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. And I think the benefits, sometimes though, just another way to look at it, when the issues seem somewhat small, that's because the big issues, that's all that's left. And everybody is agreeing on the big things. So that's another reason why we kind of feel good about today that we weren't, everybody agrees about the investment we need to make. And they agree that the investment the Commanders is making is really big. And they want to go faster on development. And so those are the big meaty issues. I just want to make sure that the public never loses sight on what we're getting. And it's a really good deal for the district. Thanks, everybody. Okay, thank you.